So if you all click on that link, the YouTube link, it's live.
Yep, we should be going. All right, everything should be up and running.
Looks
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Luann.
All right, we're ghost at this point. The YouTube link, it's live.
All right, I'm gonna mute out. Anybody need anything else?
Good evening, District 219 parents. We're going to get started in about 1 minute. Okay, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have a hybrid learning presentation that we wanted to go over with you. My name is Dr. Karen Ritter. I'm the principal at Niles West, and my two APs are with me tonight. They'll introduce themselves.
I'm Steve Pronther, Assistant Principal for Operations.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Antoine Babakani, and I'm the Assistant Principal of Student Services.
And we have our Niles North team as well.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I am proud to have my two colleagues from Niles North joining us tonight. Mr. Marlon Felton. Marlon, can you introduce yourself? Say hi.
Good evening, all. My name is Marlon Felton. I'm the Assistant Principal for Operations at Niles North. Welcome.
And Laura Bullock.
Good evening. I'm Laura Bullock. I'm the Assistant Principal of Student Services.
So we want to thank everyone for joining us. You may have noticed that we are recording this video. So if you didn't catch the beginning, it's okay. We're going to be posting this recorded video and our slide presentation on our websites and send it to all our hybrid families. So we want to present our hybrid plan to you with information that we got from the frequently asked questions that you submitted. We also want to thoroughly explain the details of the plan to relieve some of the fears and anxieties that I know many parents are feeling, students are feeling, teachers are feeling before we come back to school. So that we've been remote the full first semester, and now we are ready to come back.
So the agenda for the night will cover a number of topics. We'll talk about the hybrid schedule. We'll talk about the COVID safety protocols for students and staff. We'll talk about what hybrid learning looks like in the classroom. We'll talk about spaces outside of the classroom, hallways, lunchrooms, stairwells, and whatnot. We'll talk about lunch in our hybrid schedule. We'll talk about transportation, which we know has been a point of a lot of questions. We'll talk about arrival dismissal, and we'll do a Q&A. So this is how we would suggest we do the Q&A tonight. There is a Q&A button. We would ask that you view the whole entire presentation before you throw a question, because your question will hopefully be answered during the course of the presentation. If we have time, we've allotted an hour for this presentation. If there's time at the end, we will take additional questions. So it'll be broken up into a number of different topics, including some of the questions that were submitted last week via the survey. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Ritter.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. So the first thing we want to talk about is just the hybrid schedule. In our emails, you receive two different schedules. One is for a partial day model, and the second one is for a full day model. We will start hybrid learning in the partial day model, which is the schedule on top. So hybrid means that we're going to have some students who are in person and some students who are continuing with remote learning. So similar to other districts that we've talked to that have already reopened, the number of students that we can safely bring into the building is dependent on the size of our classrooms and spaces and how safely we can keep them socially distanced. So the model that we have chosen was option D, if you remember from some of our previous communications, and we have about 30 to 35% of our students opting in for hybrid learning. We've split the two groups of students into two different cohorts. So you notice cohort A will attend school in person on Mondays and Tuesdays, and cohort B will attend school in person on Thursdays and Fridays. We broke this down by alpha, so students with last names A through L will come on Mondays and Tuesdays. M through Z will be cohort B on Thursdays and Fridays. So again, students will come for 2 days a week in person and will remain remote for the other 2 days. One of the questions that parents asked us was why we didn't bring students back from one grade level. For example, all freshmen on one day, all sophomores on one day, which was one of our models. And the reason for that is because many of our classes are scheduled to be grade specific. So we have freshman English classes, sophomore PE classes, things like that. So we wouldn't be able to have as many freshmen come back on the same day because of the size of the classes. So we wanted to offer all grade levels the chance to come back for 2 days. And this mimics more of a regular high school schedule. So for the time being, as I mentioned, we're starting out on a partial day. So students will only attend classes for now until the 11 o'clock dismissal time. And right now that's listed as a break time in everyone's schedule. Our plan is to move to the full day school model as soon as we can. But we first want to make sure that it's safe to do so, that we give everyone a chance to settle in and adjust being back in the building. We want to make sure that our transportation is seamless, and the routes, we've given them time to work themselves out. And we want to make sure that everyone is following the safety protocols. And just to make sure that our planning and staffing needs are met before we go with a full day model. But our intention is to go to schedule number 2, which means students will be here the full day.
I hope you were able to watch the award-winning film that we shot regarding our COVID protocols. Just kidding, it wasn't award-winning, but I want to again extend my gratitude to the teams at both buildings that helped get the COVID protocol video together. So it's important that that students follow the COVID protocols on a daily basis. So each day your student attends hybrid learning, they'll be asked to do a COVID self-certification check-in through Infinite Campus. We will also obviously require a mask as they enter the building and keep the mask on all day. They will scan their ID. We'll talk a little bit about IDs later on in an FAQ. They'll scan their ID at the check-in station, much like what we see here at North at door 16. And that ID scan-in will tell us whether or not the student is supposed to be in the building for hybrid learning. And then as the temperature check is taken, that temperature check will be recorded in Infinite Campus. Each school will have a number of stations set up at the 2 entrances that we've designated at the buildings. Back to the self-certification form. So the self-certification form is a list of questions asking students whether or not they have COVID symptoms on any particular day. As far as the temperature checks, if the student is over 100.4, they will be taken to an isolation room and they will meet with a nurse, and then their parent or guardians will be called to come pick the student up. So we are going to test out some of these. We've already gone through a couple of runs at both of the buildings. Tomorrow during our freshman orientation at North, we will continue to do so at a small scale. So we are prepared for March 1st when your students come into hybrid learning. So what does the typical classroom in hybrid learning look like? Each classroom has socially distanced and numbered desks. There is a sheet of plexiglass separating the teacher from the hybrid students for safety purposes. Plenty of hand sanitizer, sanitizing wipes, sanitizing spray, and paper towels. Students will be responsible for cleaning their own desk or station prior to leaving the classroom. All rooms will be cleaned nightly. And as far as dismissing from the classrooms, students will be dismissed individually as they go on to their next class.
Several parents had questions about some of our hands-on or demonstration or lab classes. So we encourage you to reach out to the directors of those departments if you have specific questions, but we want to integrate the hybrid students with remote students as much as possible in these classes. So that includes, doing some sort of science lab, band rehearsal, physical welfare activity, culinary classes, whatever those classes are, autos, welding. We want to make sure that we give the in-person students as much of a hands-on experience as possible, but we have to be mindful that the teacher still has the remote students to supervise and teach. So what will likely happen, and this is just very broad, information. Students in all of these classes will be doing some type of observations. They'll be having teacher demonstrations of different labs and activities. We'll be able to do collaborations between the remote students and the in-person students. I know in our music classes for the instruments, we've ordered special masks where they can play instruments in the classroom. So there's many different adjustments that we've had to make to give the best in-person experience in these kinds of classes. And we may not get it right on day one where we think we know what's best right now, but it may change again based on how well it goes. We want to make sure that our remote students are still getting a good experience as well. So reach out to the directors if you have any specific questions about any of the elective classes.
So spaces outside of the classroom. So those of us who are working in offices during the course of a regular school year, we have kids coming in and out of offices for questions, to pick up forms. So just so everyone knows, the offices have plexiglass barriers to separate workers and visitors. And again, masks are worn at all given times in the offices and the classrooms. The hallways. So we take a lot of pride in this is, again, a testament to the folks who are working in both buildings, our B&G, our custodians, our APOs, and everybody who's played a role in making sure that our floors are marked, our directional markers, our stairwells are marked. So hallways and stairwells will have directional details that students will follow. When we did the simulation, the videos, kids found that to be easy to do. They stayed on the right side of the hallways, they followed the markers, they were socially distanced. And after asking them questions about how did they feel, they felt safe in it. So a lot of work went into it, and we will always continue to progress monitor the social distancing protocols and the flow of kids in the hallways and the stairwells and as they leave classrooms. So spaces outside the classroom and spaces outside of the offices. So obviously we'll have paper towel dispensers and deactivated hand dryers, and we'll use something called Gojo soap. I don't really know what Gojo soap, I think that's how it's pronounced. It's antibacterial, it's foaming hand soap with moisturizer. And again, just so everybody's clear, there will be monitoring of students in going into the bathroom to ensure that there's a small number of kids in there at any given time. That will be monitored by our admin team and our safety team.
Lunches. So for our partial day schedule, students can pick up a pre-made lunch, grab and go prior to leaving the building for the day at Niles West. That's doors 13 and 24A. At Niles North, grab and go will be at doors 1 and doors 16. Once we move to a full day schedule, we will have students back in the cafeteria in a socially distanced configuration, serving our lunch. We will also continue to distribute our grab and go lunches twice a week for our remote students and families.
As far as transportation goes, families are eligible. If you live outside the 1.5 mile radius, there's no fees and there's designated stops. We have sent this information out to our families and to our students as well. As far as some of the COVID and safety protocols that have been put in place on the buses, we have 23 students per bus. What that means is 1 student per seat. Students will also be required to wear masks before entering the bus. We will also have a loop schedule. So bus pickup will start at different times depending on your stop. But again, that information has been sent out already. There will be a loop for kids who don't have an early bird class, or if they have lunch 5th period. They essentially can come on the second wave of buses. So the first round will start at around 7:10, 7:15. Then we will have a second loop of buses, which will begin between 8:05 and 8:15 at both buildings. The bus drop off at Niles West will be door 13. And at Niles North High School, it'll be door 16. If you have any specific information on stops and things of that nature, you can reach out to our APO assistant at North, which is Susan Bomberis, and our email is listed, or Julie Bazanis at Niles West High School. And we'll be able to walk you through just the bus process and help you with any questions that you may have.
So we decided to provide the looping routes to provide some additional flexibility for our students and their families with arrival time and with the way some of our students' schedules may break down. So on Mondays and Thursdays, obviously there's an early bird start and there's a first period. If your son or daughter has an early bird start, they should take the first bus. That bus routes begin to pick up at 7:15. So our recommendation is to be out at your bus stop between 7:05 and 7:10. If you do not have an early bird and you have a first period, the second loop will begin to run at 8:15. So please encourage your daughter or your son to be out at the bus between 8:05 and 8:10 to get them to school for that 9 a.m. arrival, their first period class. Mondays and Thursdays, dismissal is at 10:50. The buses will leave both buildings at 11:05. Tuesdays and Fridays, the same loop. And this loop is just a little bit, the loop isn't different, but the class periods are different. So if your son or daughter has a 5th period study hall, they should be in school and they should take bus 1, 7:15 bus pickup time. Recommend again to be out there between 7:05 and 7:10. If they have a 5th period lunch, the recommendation is to arrive for their 6th period course and take the second bus. That's our first loop on Tuesdays and Fridays. That loop will begin to pick up students at 8:15. So please, again, the recommendation is be out at the bus stop between 8:05 and 8:10. Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays are all 11:05 bus dismissal time from both buildings. We are running a tight bus schedule in the afternoon. Classes in at 10:50. That gives our students about 15 minutes to get from their classes and back out to the buses. We do have a feeder school pickup at 11:30 a.m. This also allows us to get our students home in time for their 3rd period remote courses or their 8th period remote courses. Thank you.
Yeah, so before we get to the some of the FAQ questions and responses, I want to thank our parent, guardian, caretakers in our community, for understanding the complexity of hybrid learning. And it's almost, it's analogous to starting a school from scratch. I mean, we have structures in place from regular school, but this is a completely different entity with hybrid learning and remote learning, and in the transition. Takes a lot of planning, and it takes a lot of figuring out what are we not thinking of in this particular situation. So even though we won't be able to answer every single question tonight, I hope that people have had some of their questions answered with the slides that we presented. I know that there's a lot of questions about transportation. So we're going to go through a couple of the most frequently asked questions that we got in the survey last night, and we'll continue to update families as we go back in the FAQ before Monday, March 1st. So again, I want to just thank everybody. I'm going to thank everybody on behalf of the whole team for your patience and understanding during this most complex and difficult time for everybody. So question number 1 is, what does it look like? What does hybrid learning look like? Hybrid learning will be, on Zoom. Teachers will be conducting their classes via Zoom for both hybrid students and home remote learning students. There's a projector and screen set up in every classroom for the kids, for the teacher to see both the kids who are at home remote learning and hybrid learning. How are students going to change classes? in dismissal. Everything will be socially distanced. It'll be monitored. Right now, there are over 350 students in the building for each cohort at North and over 450 at West. So essentially, cohort A has roughly 350 students and cohort B has 350 students at North. And at West, it's cohort A is 450 and roughly 450 for cohort B. This was a question that came up a few times about travel. So if a student is traveling internationally, they'll need to quarantine, especially over spring break, for 14 days before coming back to in-person learning or to participate in activities or athletics. The Skokie Health and Human Service Department is its own entity and has chosen not to require a quarantine after traveling domestically, with the hopes that individuals are responsible with their behaviors and are exercising social distancing and masking while they are traveling within the continental United States.
A few more of the questions included questions about IDs. How can my student get a replacement ID before hybrid starts? So many students didn't come to pick up an ID yet. So everyone has to have their ID or ID number to enter the building, because they will be swiping and having the temperature check taken. So freshman hybrid students obviously haven't all gotten their IDs yet. We will have another opportunity for them to do so tomorrow at freshman orientation. Any of the upperclassmen who are hybrid learning should bring their IDs with them if they have them, or at least their ID number on the first day, and we'll make sure that we get an ID for them. Will students be allowed to bring their own lunches to school? Students are encouraged to bring their own water bottles, but remember, we do have water fountains on for water bottle filling, but the bubblers are turned off. So they won't be able to drink from the fountain. They can bring a water bottle, but they'll need to drink their water with their mask kind of still covering their mouth. So we recommend a water bottle that might have a straw so that they can easily sip some water still with their mask on. I don't think I answered the rest of that question. It was, can students bring their own lunch? There really won't be time to eat during the day while we're there in class, because we don't have the cafeteria open, but we will have grab and go options that students can take home with them. And they will be offered both days that they're there for remote learning. So actually, if they're in cohort A and they have they get a grab and go lunch for Monday, they'll take one lunch home for that day. If they come back on Tuesday, they'll actually take home lunch for the next 4 days until they come back to remote again. So that'll be available for all students.
So this was again a frequently asked question. Well, when are we going to start the full day schedule? So we're going to continue to progress monitor our transition schedule, our staffing needs, the safety protocols as we move into the full day phase. We don't have a definite time frame or date that we're going to do that. We will communicate that as we start to see the progress of our partial day schedule and communicate that to families. Will students who are signed up for hybrid have to attend school when the half-day schedule is implemented? Yes, we're asking all hybrid learners to follow their schedule. They're required to begin with the half-day session so they can best transition back into the building for the full-day schedule. From a monitoring standpoint, from an attendance standpoint, we felt it was best to have kids follow their schedule from day one, March 1st. Okay.
So we can start answering some of the Q&A questions that are popping up now. All of us are able to answer some of the questions. So I'll just call on the APs if it pertains to your area. So the first question is, if my child hasn't been signed up for the bus yet, can she still do that? If so, how? So we did give names of the assistants for the APOs that will handle transportation questions. That's Sue Bombaris at North and Julie Bazanis at West. APOs, do you have anything else to add about that?
No, I do not. We do not.
Okay. So
I have
yeah,
a question, Karen, from the YouTube viewers.
Okay.
Do you have another one or no?
Oh, there's a lot.
Okay, so how about students who want to drive to school? So North students, where there's no permit, there's no need to pay for a permit. I apologize for not including that question. It did come up a lot. There'll be no fee for parking. Students at North can park in the North lot, or they can park in the Westfield lot that's adjacent to North. The only issue with that is because of the snow, the snow being 8 foot high, it may be a little bit more treacherous. We will have a crossing guard there if students decide to park in the Westfield lot. But at the beginning, we're encouraging all students to park in the North lot at Niles North.
And at Niles West, you can students can park in the west lot, which is closest to our football field and right next to our tennis courts.
So the next question is, my daughter will be using the bus to school. I noticed that there's a 7:15 and 8:15 time. Does school not start at 8? So what we talked about here was if a student does not have an early bird class that they need to be at school for 8 o'clock, they can take the 8:15 bus and get there for first period at 9 o'clock. Similarly, if they have fifth period lunch on Tuesday or Friday, they can have that time at home and come for their sixth period class. So, but if they have a fifth period study hall as the beginning of their day or a class, they need to be on that 7:15 bus.
Yep. Thank you, Karen. And if they have a seventh period lunch, they may speak to the attendance office and follow that process to be released by their guardians from their seventh period lunch only to head home. If they have a seventh period study hall, the expectation is they attend study hall and they leave at the 10:50 bell.
Okay, I've got a question from YouTube. Can we use our old IDs for hybrid learning? So sophomores, juniors, and seniors can use their old IDs or have their ID numbers. Freshmen should have new IDs. So we're expecting freshmen in hybrid learning to come to school with those identification cards.
And if an ID is lost, we will not replace that ID with a new physical plastic card ID. We will wait until the conclusion of this school year to give everyone brand new IDs, but we will replace a lost ID with a temp ID.
Another question is, my daughter has to go back to school on Thursday and Friday, but on Friday she has class only until 10 o'clock. The bus is scheduled for 10:50. Can she wait for the bus in the school? Yes. So students that have a study hall or lunch during the day that they're at school and they're waiting for transportation, we have areas, larger areas in the building where they will be able to work as if in a study hall. Many of our students also receive support services during that time. So we, they have meetings with social workers, counselors, and things like that. So, they are absolutely encouraged and welcome to stay in the building. We have plenty of space for them to do homework or, use some of our student services.
And then at North with the study halls, all students should have a study hall location and class period in their schedule. So they will go directly to those rooms for their study halls. And then if they have a lunch, we do have a socially distanced cafeteria that even though they're not going to eat lunch, that's where they could go to study and whatnot. I have another question. This from a student at North. Will the only time we have to go through these protocols will be as we enter the building? So every morning before you come into the building and attend your classes, you will have to go through every one of the protocols. Again, that's the temperature check, it's the COVID self-certification, and the scanning of IDs. So the answer is yes, as you enter the building.
A question is, what happens to the check-in process if you have a tech outage? So we still will take temperatures of all students as they enter. If for some reason we can't do the self-certification, we do have a swipe machine in our schools. They can self-certify there if we need to. If that is out as well, then we can ask the questions in person.
I have a question about what if we originally opted into hybrid and we've changed our mind? So at North, if that is the decision you're going to make, you contact Joan Moy, Joamoy at d219.org. And at West, Carl Alexander, CARALE at d219.org. So at North, it's Joan Moy, and at West, it's Carl Alexander if you decide to move from hybrid to back to remote.
I see a couple more bus questions. Is there a cost for bus service? Not this year. We are waiving all fees for bus service. But students do have to go to a designated bus stop. We're not creating any new bus stops based on new riders. So they will have to go to a designated bus stop. We sent all of that information to hybrid families today. You should have received that. What happens if an AM bus has 23 bodies full prior to completing their published route? Mr. Felton or Mr. Printher, would you be able to answer that?
Yeah, there will be 2 buses per stop. The bus, you cannot ride the bus without a mask, and the bus drivers will ensure that they are practicing, that they are socially distancing, and they will have additional buses to provide that resource to our students. So they will make sure that they are picking up 23 students on each bus, and additional buses are available to meet the needs of all of our bus stops.
Marilyn or Steve, I got a question about 7th period lunch and the possibility to leave before the 7th period lunch.
If you want to leave during the 7th period lunch, you would just have to go to the attendance office, and we would need permission from parents to make sure that it's okay for our students to leave. And that also helps with our contact tracing and just the safety piece of when students are leaving and entering our building.
And that brings up a good point. I don't know if it was a question or not about study hall. The expectation is that the study hall is going to be an academic setting. So the expectation is students are going to attend their study hall session. The attendance is taken in study hall. So I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that if the study hall is in the schedule at North, students have a designated location. I know that at West, there have been designated locations, but the expectation is because it's an academic setting that students will be there when they're scheduled.
Yeah, so it's very likely that students may have a lunch and a study hall on the same day. So really, students should be attending probably most likely two periods a day. So on Mondays and Thursdays, that would be periods 1 and 2. And then on Tuesdays and Fridays, you may have a lunch during that time, so you should be there for 2 classes, whether that's a study hall or a regular class. Dropping and picking kids up are the same as always, and what time is the earliest that they can be dropped off? Mr. Felton or Mr. Printher?
7:15 is the earliest. We are allowing students to access the building. Just some context on the bus pickup. Buses start to pick up routes at 7:15. The first bus arrives between 7:30 and 7:40. So we don't want to have students congregating or in the building too early before that first period start time.
And as far as the student drop-off goes at Niles West, we're using door 24A, which is our black box theater entrance. And again, that alleviates our bus drop-off at door 13 and our visitor entrance at door 1.
I got a couple of really good questions about self-certification. First question is, when do the students do the daily self-certification? So we'd like them to do it prior to when they are leaving for school. That would be optimal. So we will push out information about how that's going to work. So there'll be a link every day where students self-certify that they're COVID-free. And then they'll come into the building, they'll scan their ID. Hopefully they will have done that before they got into school. They'll scan their ID. It'll show up. 3 things will show up. Whether they're eligible for hybrid learning, in other words, they've opted in. Number 2, whether they've done the COVID self-certification. If they haven't done it or they forgot to do it or they couldn't access the link, we'll manually administer the COVID-19 questions to them. So we'll ask them the questions. And then they'll have their temperature taken and that temperature will be recorded in Infinite Campus. So optimally, if you've got an 8 o'clock class, you probably want to do the self-certification between, 6 a.m. or whenever the student wakes up, but optimally before they get to school.
We have a couple of questions about teachers. Are all teachers returning? Will they be in the classroom? So yes, the majority of our teachers are returning. There are some that will be teaching remotely because of an accommodation. In that case, we will have someone else in the classroom supervising and monitoring and potentially running the technology for the in-person students while the teacher teaches remotely. But most teachers are coming back to the building to teach. So many questions about study halls. Where do students go? We have designated rooms for study halls, and that can be used as a work period for students.
Question on attendance, how will attendance be taken? So the dean teams at both of the schools are formulating a set of codes to work with IT to be able to code the different absences. So that is to still be determined.
A few questions about PE and locker rooms. Locker rooms are not going to be available for changing. So we encourage students to dress in comfortable clothes and gym shoes that they can work out in if they have PE that day. If not, we can always have them dress in a bathroom, but locker rooms are going to be off limits. Who do you notify if you want to withdraw from hybrid? So again, you can email the principal's office. That's Carl Alexander at Niles West and Joan Moy at Niles North. There's several questions about only having one class on a Thursday, for example. Our ultimate goal, remember, is to move to the full day schedule. So while it may seem like, my child's only going to go for 1 hour a day, we're building up to that full day schedule. So we encourage them to come for the study hall. We want them to be there. They should be there. It's an academic class. So the only time that they would not have to come is if they're arriving late because they don't have an early bird class, or if they have 5th period lunch starting on Tuesdays and Fridays. Otherwise, they should be at school for at least 2 periods a day initially in this partial day schedule. No parking fees for students who are driving themselves. Drop off, we said, can begin at 7:15. Our security is at the front entrances all day long. So, whatever time the students do come, we will be able to temperature check and do the self-certification.
So 2 questions. First of all, is there a freshman orientation at Niles North? Laura, can you talk a little bit about that and what time that's going to start for a particular student and how long they can expect to be there? We know that information has been sent out.
Absolutely. We are looking forward to hosting freshman orientation tomorrow, and it will be an opportunity for students to tour the building and have an opportunity to meet some staff members and share a little bit about their space and resources. So it's broken up into sessions, hour sessions that are broken up by alpha. So 9 to 9:45 are for students with last names that begin with A to D. 10 to 10:45 is for students with last names that begin with E to H. 11 to 11:45 is for students with last names that begin with I and M. 12 to 12:45 is for students with the last name starting with an N to S. And then lastly, our last session at 1 o'clock to 1:45 is for students with last names from T to Z. So we are ready and very much looking forward to our class of 2024 joining us tomorrow for the first time in a while at Niles North.
Next, thanks, Laura. Next question is, what happens if there's a tech outage, and how does that impact the check-in procedures? Well, we would actually manually, verbally ask the kids the COVID questions. We'd still be able to take our temperature checks and move the kids onto class. Got a question about the cost for bus service. Gentlemen, what's the radius where it is the individual family would have to pay?
There's no bus fees for the spring. So essentially, if you live within the 1.5 mile radius, you would have to look at the different designated stops because the way our buses are set up, it's for our students who live outside the 1.5 mile radius. So the recommendation from the school would be if you can get dropped off, that would be best case scenario. But if you do find a stop that's near where you live at, that also will work as well.
There's a question about Chromebooks. Yes, students should bring their Chromebooks every day to school. We will have some charging areas if they need to charge it, but we encourage them to come with a fully charged Chromebook for the morning sessions.
Question about dropping and picking kids up if they're being driven by their parent or guardians. You know, at North, obviously you want to drop your kids off at door 2 so they can enter the building for their COVID certifications at door 1. I don't know, Steve, over at West, where the parents would drop kids.
Our preference would be door 24 because we're reserving door 1 for our visitor entrance and our staff entrance. And again, door 24 is our black box theater entrance, which is right next to our tennis courts. For our freshmen, when we do a tour, we'll make sure that you know where that entrance is, so you're ready to go for next week.
Here's a question for our student services team. What kind of counseling and related services availability will be there during remote learning in the first schedule?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our school counselors, social workers, and psychs will be also available. One of the things that we've been talking to a lot of students and families about is making sure that students don't leave class time to go see a counselor or psych unless it's obviously an emergency or unless a student absolutely needs to, whether it's either an anxiety or panic attack and requires them to see a counselor or psych. But both Niles North and West have the counselors, school social workers, and school psychs on the premise to serve our students. And it's for the allotted time that students are in the building for all 4 days of the week.
And I will just add to that. Yeah, our student services team is looking forward to meeting with students. So if you have scheduled appointments with a psychologist, social worker, counselor, they will be reaching out to you if you're a hybrid learner to let you know where in the building you will be meeting, to allow for all of the safety precautions and social distancing that we have in place in our classrooms. And same would be true for our health office, that if there is a need during the school day, the student should consult their teacher, and the teacher will ensure that they have access to our health office team.
This is a good question. What happens if a student who signed up for in-person learning cannot attend in person on a given day? Can they attend remotely and not be considered absent? So yes, if you are a hybrid student and you need to miss in-person learning for one day, you can still connect remotely, attend your classes that way, and be counted as present. However, if this becomes a pattern and you end up staying home most of the time and are not coming in person as you should, we may reassign you to remote learning permanently.
I have a question about how PW will work. So you can certainly reach out and contact the PW teacher. Both buildings are aligned in the way that PW will be conducted. So my suggestion would be contact the individual teacher and or the director of PW at either of the buildings. Can siblings sit together on the bus? No, well, nobody's going to sit next to each other on the bus, right? Things are going to be staggered diagonally. So siblings can be on the same bus, but they can't sit in the same seat. Hopefully that answers your question.
Another question is, how long do students have to get to their next class? So we're using the same schedule that we have currently, which allows 10 minutes in between each class. Because we are dismissing students from classes one by one, this will take a little bit longer than our normal passing period. So the 10 minutes will be definitely a benefit during dismissal to make sure that everyone's socially distancing themselves in the hallways.
I have a great question. Should our students bring their computers to school while attending in person? Absolutely. Students should not only bring their Chromebooks, but they should bring their chargers. Because again, in hybrid learning, they will still be learning on Zoom, but they'll be physically in the classroom. And the teacher will be teaching to the kids in the classroom via Zoom and to the students who are on home remote learning. So that's a good question. Yes, all students should bring their Chromebook and their chargers to hybrid learning. Second question is not second in the sequence. Is the grab and go lunch free? Yes, the grab and go lunch is free. Will we have to pay for parking if we drive to school? No, parking is free for the duration of this year. What are the contents of grab and go lunch? All I know is it's probably going to be really good. Now, Marlon, Steve, you know, I have no idea what the kids are going to eat.
You want us to chime in on that?
Yeah, I don't know what's going to be served.
It's a mix of breakfast items, lunch items, perishables, non-perishables. Excuse me. Some healthy stuff, veggies in there, pre-cooked meals. Some days there are sandwiches. Just a variety of items to they can pick and choose to hold them over throughout the day. Lots of goodies, I would say.
Excellent. Is it recommended for our students to double mask? Well, we're not requiring a double mask. If you feel as a parent or guardian that that's the best safety precaution for your student, then certainly feel free to have them double masked. How early can a student be dropped off at school to check in? I think we've talked about that. It's 7:15. I know at North. Steve, is it the same at West?
That's correct. 7:15 is fine.
Thank you, sir. Okay, what happens after spring break? Now, some of these questions that we have answered in the presentation. So if there's traveling, if a family is going away internationally, there's a 14-day quarantine period upon their return for the student to come back into school or to go to athletics or activities. Domestically, there's no quarantine period, but we're asking families to make sure that they exercise the utmost in caution as they travel within the continental US. Question is, how does my child know their classroom assignments? It should be on their schedules at both of the buildings. So yeah. Question about if students are not signed up for the bus and not driving, where should they be picked up? So we'd like students to be at North to be picked up at door 2 and at West.
Door 24.
Question about, are all the teachers coming back into hybrid learning? The answer is no. Some teachers have qualified for a medical exemption. So they'll actually be teaching the class from home to the students who have opted into hybrid learning under the supervision of a room supervisor in that particular scenario.
Another question is if my student would like to go to class on Monday, but would like to be remote on Tuesday, is that allowed? No. So if they're in a cohort A, they have to attend both days, Monday and Tuesday. If they're in cohort B, that's Thursday and Friday, they need to attend both days. There's a question about instruments is, can students leave their instruments somewhere so they don't have to carry them around? This would be a great question to email the fine arts directors. They should have an area where students can keep their instruments. The maximum capacity of study hall rooms is another question. And this is entirely based on the number of desks that we can keep in a room that are socially distanced. So all of our classrooms are different sizes. And really the capacity is based on how many desks we can put in there socially distanced. So all the desks are at least 6 feet apart. They are marked on the floor so that we know exactly where to put them, and they will be numbered so that students know which desk they're sitting in. So again, study hall seems to be a question that many people have. They are to attend study hall during their schedule. If for any reason they need to miss a class or miss a study hall, they need to be called out by the attendance office with parent permission. We're not going to just let students leave because they don't have a class, because we are responsible for everybody.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. So, we're talking a lot about restrictions and self-certifications and markers on the floor. We really want your kids back in the building. And I want to be, I'm going to speak on behalf of my colleagues. We're actually excited about March 1st. It's been a long process. We feel like, it may not be the most optimal learning environment, but it also is an opportunity for kids to get their feet back in the building in preparation for next year, when we're hopefully back to some semblance of normal school. But make no mistake about it, we're excited. We're excited. We're going to see a bunch of kids tomorrow at orientation. That's exciting. It's going to feel like school is starting again, like it did in August. So yeah, we're excited. We're opening our arms, opening our arms and our hearts and our minds to your kids. And I just want to be clear on that, because I know we're getting caught up in all of this minutia and restrictions, and those are important. Don't get me wrong, but from the bottom of our hearts, we really are excited about your kids coming into the building. Anybody, colleagues?
No, I would definitely agree with that. And I know that there are safety concerns because you don't know what the building looks like. You haven't seen the inside of it, just pictures here and there. But I would feel 100% comfortable sending my own kids to either one of our buildings. We have taken great care in making sure that it is as safe as possible, from the air filters that we use to the socially distant practices, to the mask wearing, and communicating that to all students, staff, and everyone in our community, the importance of wearing a mask, using hand sanitizer, washing your hands, cleaning your desk space. So from what we've heard from other districts, students are so ready to come back that they're willing to do all that. So I know there's been some concern about mask wearing, what's going to happen if students don't wear masks. We believe that they will do the right thing because they want to be there so bad, and we want them there. So it's going to take all of us to keep everybody safe and feeling safe. So everyone needs to do their part. Yay, I see some comments now that say we're excited. Thank you for all your support. That's great to hear. So again, if you still have questions, we will actually send out a copy of the FAQ, because I know many of you came in at different times tonight, so you may have missed a question here or there. We'll send you the copy of this recording. We'll send you our slide presentation, and also the frequently asked questions that we'll have answers to. We'll send that out as well. I know it's a lot of information to sift through. So if you feel like you just need to reach out to one of us and ask questions, or go over your particular situations, we are willing to do that. We're very busy right now with planning for the reopening and freshman orientation, but we want to make sure that you all feel comfortable and safe sending your students to school. So we are here to answer questions for you.
And I know that schedule is wonky, right? It's not necessarily what folks wanted at the outset, but we want to do everything we can to avoid going on adaptive pause quickly. Adaptive pause means that there's been a COVID outbreak in the school, and then everybody has to go to home remote learning. So it's a very conservative approach to a schedule. I understand that. But at the same time, we feel is a transition back. We haven't had kids in the building for almost a year, but as a transition back, we feel that this is the most prudent in the early stage. So, because we don't want to, the adaptive pause could be the worst possible thing that could happen. Colleagues, any final thoughts?
Excited to see everybody. Excited to see everybody.
Welcome back.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing the students. Thank you all for your time today.
Hope to see many of you tomorrow. We're ready, and we're anxiously awaiting your arrival. So we'll see you soon.
Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Okay, Joan, we just got to make sure we capture the questions that we didn't answer. I don't know if that chat will be saved live, right?
No, I cut and paste that. I shared that document with you, the Google Doc that I was talking about when we were trying to set up. So it's shared with you, and it's got all the questions on there. So you got 176 comments.
Okay.
I got a couple of more that just came in. I'm going to throw on there. But yeah, I mean, you had about 160 people. So you probably could have done without the YouTube.
Yep. Okay. Joan, I'm going to cut out of this meeting. Thanks again for all your help.
Yeah, so you've got the document.
Okay. Take care.
Okay. Hey, Phil, you're good? You're on mute.